The ER waiting room had the same rhythm it always did. Too bright, too cold, and full of people trying to look like they weren't scared. A TV murmured above the corner chairs. A toddler fussed into a paper cup of apple juice. Someone coughed into their sleeve and stared straight ahead, like the sound wasn't theirs. The digital board above the triage window flashed patient numbers that didn't feel connected to real time. Amina Brooks sat hunched forward in a plastic chair with her hands pressed against her lower right abdomen. She was a black woman in her late 20s, hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing a hoodie and sweatpants because she'd left her apartment in the first clothes she could grab. Her skin had that faint sheen of sweat that came from pain you couldn't outbreathe. Every few minutes, a wave of sharp pressure rolled through her side, and she had to close her eyes and count. Not dramatically, not loudly, just to survive the moment. Her boyfriend, Evan Mercer, stood near the wall with a bottle of water and a charger cord looped around his fingers like a nervous habit. Evan was white, early 30s, and he kept glancing up at the triage window as if staring could speed up the process. "You want me to go ask again?" Evan whispered. Amina shook her head. "They already know," she said, voice tight but controlled. "They just don't care." She didn't mean the whole world didn't care, she meant the system didn't. The system cared in rules and categories, urgent, not urgent, dramatic, not dramatic, and Amina had learned that if you weren't loud, people assumed you weren't serious. But she had also learned that being loud could get you labelled. So she sat quietly and breathed through it. When the triage door opened, a nurse called a number and a name. Amina Brooks. Amina stood slowly, careful, as if moving too fast would tear something inside her. Evan stepped forward with her, but a hand lifted immediately. "Family stays out here," the nurse said without looking at him. Evan started to protest. "I'm her out here," the nurse repeated, sharper now. Amina touched Evan's arm gently. "It's okay," she said. "I'll be right back." Evan's face tightened, but he nodded and sat back down, watching her disappear behind the door. Inside, triage was all brisk efficiency, clipboards, blood pressure cuffs, a scale, and the faint smell of antiseptic. A nurse in scrubs stood at a computer typing with quick, impatient taps. Her badge read, Renee Caldwell, RN. Renee didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask how Amina was feeling in a way that invited a real answer. She asked questions like she was trying to eliminate possibilities, not understand symptoms. "Name," Renee said. "Amina Brooks," Amina replied. "Date of birth." Amina gave it. Renee continued. "What's the complaint?" Amina steadied her voice. "Severe pain in my lower right abdomen," she said. "It started earlier today and it's getting worse. I feel nauseous." Renee's eyes flicked up for half a second, then back to the screen. "Pain scale 1 to 10, she said. Amina hesitated. She hated this question. People treated it like a test you could fail. 8, Amina said honestly. Renee's mouth tightened slightly, like she didn't believe her. 8, Renee repeated flatly. "Any vomiting?" "Not yet," Amina said. "But I feel like I could." Renee nodded once. "Fever?" "I don't know," Amina admitted. "I feel hot and cold," Renee typed. "Pregnant?" "No," Amina said quickly. Renee glanced up, finally making direct eye contact. "When was your last period?" she asked. Amina answered, trying to keep her tone neutral despite the discomfort of being interrogated while in pain. Renee's eyes lingered a beat too long, then she looked back down. "Any history of anxiety?" she asked. Amina blinked. "No," she said. "This isn't anxiety." Renee didn't respond to that. She wrapped a blood pressure cuff around Amina's arm with movements that were competent but not gentle. "Hold still," Renee said. The cuff tightened. Amina winced as the pressure squeezed her arm, but she didn't make a sound. Renee watched the numbers, then typed again. "BP is fine," she said, like it meant the pain couldn't be real. Amina swallowed. "Can I have something for the pain?" she asked quietly. Renee exhaled through her nose. "We don't give pain meds in triage," she said. "You'll see the provider when you get a room." Amina nodded, jaw tight. "How long?" she asked. Renee shrugged slightly. "Depends," she said. "We're busy." Amina's pain surged again, sharp, hot, specific. She pressed a hand against her side and bent slightly at the waist, breath catching. Renee looked at her like she was inconvenienced. "Try to sit down," Renee said. "You're making yourself lightheaded." Amina's eyes flared. "I'm not making myself anything," she said, still controlled. "It hurts." Renee's expression cooled. "I understand you're uncomfortable," she said, in the tone people used when they didn't understand at all. "But we need to keep you calm." Amina stared at her. "I am calm," she said softly. Renee printed a wristband and snapped it onto Amina's wrist. "We'll get urine," she said, "and labs when you're in back." Amina's voice tightened. "Could it be appendicitis?" she asked. "It's on the right side. It's—" Renee cut her off. "Lots of things can cause belly pain," she said. "Gas, cramps, stress. You'd be surprised." Amina felt something inside her. Rage, humiliation, fear, collide at once. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, clearly, "I know what gas feels like." Renee's eyes narrowed slightly. "Okay," she said. "Take a seat back out there. Someone will call you." Back in the waiting room, Amina sat down again with Evan. He stood immediately. "What did they say?" Evan asked. Amina forced her voice steady. "They think it's nothing," she said. "Or they want to treat it like it's nothing." Evan's face tightened. "That's—" he started. Amina shook her head gently. "Don't," she said. "Not here. I can't fight them and the pain." Evan sat beside her, jaw clenched, and took her hand. Amina's palm was damp. Minutes crawled. Amina watched the triage door open and close, each time thinking it might be her. She tried to focus on details, tile lines, the hum of the vending machine, because focusing on the pain only made it louder. Eventually, another nurse called her name. "Amina Brooks." Amina stood slowly and followed down a hallway into the treatment area. A curtain bay opened, a narrow bed, a monitor, an IV cart. Renee Caldwell appeared again, now with a tray of supplies. She moved quickly, efficient and detached. "We're gonna start an IV," Renee said. "Labs." Amina sat on the bed. "Can I get something for pain now?" she asked again, voice tight. Renee glanced at the chart. "Provider has to order it," she said. "We'll see." Amina's eyes stung, not from tears, but from the strain of holding herself together. A doctor was supposed to come soon, but what came first was more waiting. Renee left and returned, doing other tasks. Each time she looked at Amina, it felt like she was measuring whether Amina deserved urgency. Amina turned her head toward the curtain and saw a shadow pass. A provider moving past her bay without stopping. Her stomach dropped. Evan was still outside. Policy. She was alone with the pain and the sense that if she collapsed, someone would call it dramatic instead of dangerous. When Renee returned, Amina spoke again, quietly but firmly. "Please," she said, "something is wrong." Renee paused, then said the line that finally broke through Amina's restraint. "You're not the only patient here," Renee said, "and you're not dying." Amina stared at her, breath shallow. Renee continued, tone almost bored. "We see abdominal pain all day. If we rushed every stomachache, we'd never get anything done." Amina's voice came out low and steady, but it shook with the effort of staying controlled. "This isn't a stomachache," she said. Renee's eyes flicked away. She turned back to her computer. Then the lab printer at the station outside the bay began to whir. A strip of paper slid out, then another. Renee glanced at it automatically, the way staff did when results came in. Her face didn't change at first. Then it did. Just slightly, eyes narrowing, posture shifting, the smallest pause that meant something important had landed. Renee stepped closer to the printer, pulled the pages, and read again. Amina watched from the bed, heart pounding now for a different reason. Because Renee Caldwell, who had just told her she wasn't dying, suddenly stopped acting like the pain was a joke. Renee turned back toward Amina, voice different, still controlled, but no longer dismissive. "Amina," Renee said, "I need you to stay very still for a moment." Amina's throat tightened. "What is it?" she asked. Renee didn't answer right away. She stepped out of the bay and spoke quickly to someone in the hall, urgent, clipped words Amina couldn't fully catch, but she caught enough. "Elevated white count. Concern for acute abdomen. Get the provider now." Amina's hands curled into the blanket. Evan, out in the waiting area, had no idea anything had shifted, and Renee Caldwell, finally moving fast, was about to learn something she should have respected from the beginning. Pain isn't a performance, and the labs were about to prove it. The curtain bay felt smaller once urgency entered it. A minute ago, Amina had been a stomachache in a crowded ER. Now she watched Renee Caldwell move with sharp purpose, printing pages, tapping her screen, stepping out into the hallway and returning with a different face. Not kinder, exactly, just alert. Amina sat upright on the bed, one hand pressed to her right side, the other gripping the thin hospital blanket. Her breathing was controlled but shallow. "What is it?" Amina Brooks asked again. Renee didn't meet her eyes. "Your labs show elevated white blood cells," she said, as if reading from a checklist. "It can indicate infection or inflammation." Amina's heart thudded. "So you believe me now?" she said quietly, more statement than accusation. Renee's jaw tightened. "I'm getting the provider," she said, and left the bay. Amina lay back carefully, staring at the ceiling tiles. Her pain hadn't gone away. If anything, it felt sharper now, like a hot hook in her lower right abdomen. But something else had joined it. Fear. Not fear of the staff anymore. Fear of what her body was doing while people argued about whether she seemed sick enough. A few moments later, footsteps returned, faster, heavier. A doctor pulled the curtain aside and stepped in. Dr. Wesley Hart. He was white, mid-40s, wearing a plain white coat and a tired expression that still carried competence. He didn't waste time on small talk. "I'm Dr. Hart," he said. "Tell me what's going on." Amina explained again, as clearly as she could. The onset, the location, the nausea, the way movement made it worse. She described it without drama because she was already exhausted from having to prove she deserved care. Dr. Hart listened, then pressed gently on her abdomen. When he reached the right lower quadrant, Amina sucked in a breath and flinched despite herself. "Okay," Dr. Hart said, voice serious now. "That's significant tenderness." Amina stared at him. "Could it be appendicitis?" she asked. Dr. Hart nodded once. "It's high on the list," he said. "Your labs support it. We need imaging." Renee stood at the computer station, quiet now. Dr. Hart turned slightly. "Order a CT abdomen and pelvis with contrast," he said, "and give her pain control and anti-nausea." Renee nodded quickly. "Yes, doctor." Amina's eyes closed for one brief second as relief hit. Relief that someone was finally taking her seriously, mixed with anger that it took blood work to earn basic attention. The IV medication helped within minutes, not by removing the pain entirely, but by turning it from a screaming alarm into something she could endure without shaking. Her nausea eased enough that she could breathe deeper. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the line Renee had said. "You're not dying." Amina opened her eyes and looked at Renee as she adjusted the IV line. "Why did you say that?" she asked quietly. Renee paused, hands stilling for a fraction of a second. "Say what?" she asked, like she didn't remember. "You told me I wasn't dying," Amina said. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "You told me it was probably gas or stress." Renee's expression tightened. "We see a lot of abdominal pain," she said, defensive. "We have to triage." Amina held her gaze. Triage isn't dismissal, Amina said. And you didn't just underestimate my pain. You treated me like I was exaggerating. Renee's lips pressed into a line. She didn't apologize. Not yet. Let's focus on getting you taken care of, she said. Amina didn't argue further. She wanted care more than a debate, but she remembered. They wheeled her to CT. The hallway lights slid overhead in bright strips. The contrast injection made a warm flush spread through her body like a sudden fever. She lay still while the machine hummed, trying to keep her mind from spiraling. Back in the bay, she waited again, this time with stakes. It was then that Evan Mercer finally made it into the treatment area. A staff member had called him in after the situation was upgraded, and he arrived looking anxious and pale. He hurried to Amina's bedside, taking her hand immediately. "Oh my God," he said softly. "Are you okay? They wouldn't tell me anything." Amina squeezed his fingers. "They're taking it seriously now," she said. "They think it's appendicitis." Evan's jaw clenched. "Finally," he muttered. He glanced toward the desk. Renee was speaking to someone, her posture tense. Amina's voice stayed quiet. "Don't start something," she said to Evan. "Not yet." Evan nodded, biting down on his anger. "Okay," he said. "I'm here." Minutes later, Dr. Hart returned with a tablet in his hand. His expression was firm and urgent. "Amina," he said, "your CT shows an inflamed appendix. It looks like it's close to perforation." Amina's stomach dropped. "Perforation?" she repeated. "It means it could rupture," Dr. Hart said. "That becomes more dangerous. Infection can spread. The good news is, because you came in when you did, we caught it in time." Amina stared at him, stunned. "So what happens now?" she asked. "We're calling surgery," Dr. Hart said. "You'll likely go to the OR tonight." Evan's grip tightened around her hand. "Tonight?" he asked. Dr. Hart nodded. "Yes," he said. "This isn't something we sit on." Amina swallowed hard. Fear rose again, but now it was directed at the situation, not the disbelief. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. Dr. Hart stepped out to call the surgical team. Amina lay back and stared at the ceiling, breathing through the fear. Evan leaned in close. "You did the right thing," he whispered. "You knew." Amina's voice was small but steady. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "And they treated me like I was dramatic." Evan looked toward the desk again. "I want to report that nurse," he said quietly. Amina hesitated. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change, and she knew that if she stayed silent, Renee would say the same lines to someone else. "Not revenge," Amina said. "Accountability. After I'm safe." Evan nodded. "After," he agreed. When Renee came back into the bay to prep Amina for surgery, consent forms, surgical checklist, removing jewelry, her movements were efficient but tense. She avoided Amina's eyes until she couldn't. Amina watched her carefully. "Do you understand how close that was?" Amina asked softly. Renee froze for a beat. Then she forced herself to answer. "Yes," she said, voice tight. "Appendicitis can worsen quickly." Amina nodded. "And you told me I wasn't dying," she said. Renee swallowed. The defensiveness in her face faltered. For the first time, she looked less like a gatekeeper and more like a person realizing she had been careless with someone else's life. "I shouldn't have said that," Renee admitted quietly. Amina held her gaze. "You shouldn't have thought it," Amina said, calm but firm. "Not about me, not about anyone." Renee's eyes lowered. "I'm sorry," she said, still stiff but real enough to hear. Amina didn't respond with forgiveness or anger. She simply nodded once, as if filing it away. Surgery moved fast after that. A surgical resident arrived to explain the procedure in plain terms. Consent forms were signed. Antibiotics began dripping through the IV. Amina was wheeled down bright corridors into colder spaces. Before the doors closed, Evan leaned in. "I love you," he said. Amina swallowed around fear and nodded. "I love you too," she said. The next few hours blurred. When Amina woke up, her throat was dry, her body heavy, and her abdomen sore in a different way. Post-surgical pain, contained and managed. The surgeon stood near the bed with a calm expression. "We got it out," the surgeon said. "It was inflamed and very close to rupturing. You came in at the right time." Amina blinked slowly, relief washing through her in a wave that made her eyes sting. Evan was there, sitting in a chair, exhausted but smiling through it. "You're okay," he whispered. Amina breathed out carefully. "I'm okay," she repeated, like she needed to hear it in her own voice. Later that day, once she was stable, Noelle, not here. Different story. Keep it clean, no crossover. A hospital patient advocate came to her room after Evan requested one. Her name was Gillian Park, and she spoke with the kind of calm professionalism that made it easier to tell the truth. "I understand you want to file a concern about your triage experience," Gillian said. Amina nodded. "Yes," she said, "not because they were busy, because I was dismissed. I was mocked in tone, minimized, and told I wasn't dying when I was close to a rupture." Gillian's eyes sharpened slightly, and she took notes. "Do you recall names?" she asked. Amina didn't hesitate. "Renee Caldwell," she said, "registered nurse." Gillian nodded. "We can review chart notes, timestamps, and triage documentation," she said. "And we will." Amina looked at her. "I don't want someone fired because I'm angry," she said. "I want the hospital to treat pain like information, not inconvenience." Gillian nodded once. "That's fair," she said, "and that's exactly what this process is for." Before Gillian left, she added, "Also, your case will be used in our quality review. Appendicitis presenting in young women is often under-triaged. We're working to correct that." Amina felt something unclench in her chest. Not everything, but something. Because for once, the system wasn't just saving her life, it was listening. Amina spent another night under observation, then went home with antibiotics, follow-up instructions, and a small stack of discharge papers that looked ordinary for something that could have turned catastrophic. In the car, Evan glanced at her. "You okay?" he asked. Amina looked out at the daylight, at people walking down the sidewalk, completely unaware of how fast a stomachache could become a surgery. "I'm okay," Amina said. Then she added, voice steady, "And I'm not letting them do that to the next person." Because the ending wasn't just that the lab results arrived in time, it was that Amina survived and turned what happened into a record the hospital couldn't ignore.